Hello there. Hi, I'm Anna Mapson, and I'm going to be chatting this morning about nutrition for brain health, for productivity, and just helping you get a lot of energy out of your day. I'll just wait and see if a few people are going to join live, because I think a few people had clicked on the invitation that you were keen to join live. So hopefully you'll get a notification in a mo. Although I won't wait too long, because if you're watching it on a replay, it's always really annoying when there's really long waits at the beginning of sessions. So I'm just going to check. It's in the group. I'm just checking that. Oh, okay, someone's watching. I can see. Brill. All right, I'm going to just get going then. And yeah, I'll probably take about 20 minutes. But if you are watching and you want to ask questions, then feel free to drop them into the comments, and yeah, I'll answer them as we go, or just at the end, or whatever. So I'll start with an introduction. My name is Anna Mapson, and my business is called Goodness Me Nutrition. I'm based in Bristol, and I'm a nutritionist, a registered nutritional therapist, working with people with IBS, bloating, and gut health. But today I'm going to talk really about how you can kind of maximise your energy and try and keep your energy levels going throughout the day, so that you can show up, for everything you need to do for your kids, for your business, whatever it is that you're doing in the day, so you feel like you've got lots of energy. And there's a couple of things that I'm going to cover, but yeah, just feel free to ask any questions. Great. So we're going to talk through a couple of kind of areas of nutrition and nutrients that are important. So when we're thinking about brain health, obviously the brain itself is critical to our lives, but we think of it as being kind of quite separate in a way in terms of nutrition. So we're thinking mostly, I guess I do a lot as well, about digestion, about trying to get the digestion healthy. And our brain and our gut are really, really connected. So getting our digestion right is really important, but there are some things we can do just to support brain health through the way that we eat as well. So we're going to talk a bit about gut health as well at the end, and how we can support that. A couple of key nutrients that are really important for brain health are fats, omega-3 fats especially. So these are healthy fats. They're essential fatty acids, which means we can't get them from, we don't make them ourselves, we have to get them from our diet. And mostly they're coming from oily fish. So that's things like mackerel, sardines, herring, anchovies. These are oily fish, generally the smaller fish at the end of the scale, not like your large fish. And the reason that they're so good is that they have been associated with improvements in memory, and they've done lots of tests when people have taken omega-3 supplements in children, so they've improved their scores in terms of recall and ability to concentrate at school, but also at the other end of the scale of life with older people who are at risk of dementia or Alzheimer's. And increasing the amount of omega-3 in our diets can also help with memory and cognition, and sort of staying sharp at that end of the scale of life as well. So we know that having enough omega-3 in our diets is really beneficial for the way in which we think. And partly of the reason for that could be that omega-3 fats are very anti-inflammatory. So they help to reduce systemic inflammation throughout the body. So if you're vegan or you're vegetarian, or you just hate fish, which a lot of people do, and those fish that are rich in omega-3 fats are generally fishy fish. So a lot, again, in this country, we don't really tend to eat much of those. But you might consider to take a supplement of omega-3 if you don't eat any fish. And you can get vegan sources of omega-3 with a gelatin-free capsule. The reason that the fish have the omega-3 is because they eat algae in the water, in the sea, and then we harvest the oil out of the fish. But vegan sources, you can just get an algae-based supplement which doesn't involve any fish. So it's really important to have that balance of fats in our diet, and just generally fats is not something we should be afraid of. We've grown up, most people, in a very kind of fat phobic world, where we're sort of told that everything low fat is better than normal. So low fat yogurt's better than a normal full fat yogurt, low fat milk instead. So whilst we do need to watch our intake of saturated fats, because there is a direct correlation between high levels of saturated fat and heart disease, that we know that fats are actually good for us in some quantities. So we can very much focus on the healthy sorts of fats because they are good for your brain. So that's what we're talking about today, is kind of brain building. Omega-3 fats I would wanted to start with, and that would be one of my key recommendations. So eating 2 to 3 portions a week of oily fish is the sort of general recommendation. If you don't eat fish, consider whether an omega-3 supplement is right for you. And as part of this chat today, I can't give you actually personalised recommendations for anything. It's just some sort of generalised good advice, but do seek help from an individual nutrition practitioner if you want to, and you can always ask me about consultation if you are interested at the end. But so omega-3, really important. Also then I'm going to talk a bit about caffeine as well. So we just tend to think about when we want to get a really good day's work, you might go and have a couple of cups of coffee and really trying to get your brain to focus. So what we know about coffee is generally it does help, it does wake you up. So what it does is it blocks the adenosine receptors in our brain, which eventually as we're doing anything through the day, this chemical is released and it goes to our brain to tell us, and more of it builds up and it tells us that we're getting tired. But caffeine blocks those receptors, so we don't get any of the messages that we're getting tired. So we tend to feel more awake and alert because we're not getting any of those messages to slow down. But if we have too much caffeine, that can obviously send people really jittery, and sometimes that happens just with 1 cup of coffee. But for some people it might be only build up over time. But what I would say is that having 1 or 2 cups of coffee in a day, probably for most people, depending on how your liver processes it out, won't affect you negatively. But having multiple cups of coffee will, because it builds up and it's quite hard to process out of our body and to get rid of by the end of the day. So it can eventually affect our sleep. So some people will feel better just having a couple of cups of coffee, but having the 4th or 5th cup of coffee isn't going to make you more awake, if you know what I mean. It's not going to make you more and more alert throughout the day. We actually need to try and switch up the way that we're working. If you're feeling like you need loads of coffee throughout the day, thinking about how you can build in breaks, because your brain can only cope with concentrating for a certain amount of time. For most people, it's about 20 minutes of average intense concentration. For some people it might be a little bit more or less, but it's having breaks and kind of getting up and moving your body can be just as effective as having coffee. So there's also some really interesting research I was just looking at this morning, which I'm going to post on my page actually later today, but it was about when we have our coffee, and if we have it before we have our breakfast, then we tend to have a much worse glucose response to the breakfast that we do eat. So if you have coffee or in the mornings, then trying to have it with your breakfast or after your breakfast will probably help you to get a better glucose response, which means your blood sugar levels won't be going up and down. And this is important for our productivity, for our brain health, because when we're getting blood sugar spikes where we get loads of energy and feel really great and then we drop off again, that can really make us feel quite tired, irritable, and we end up reaching for something sugary, carby, because we want an energy boost. So thinking about how we can balance our blood sugars is quite important to maintain our energy throughout the day. So firstly, if you have caffeine, have it earlier in the day, have it in the morning. Try not to have it after lunch. I normally recommend with my clients, because that half-life of caffeine to get out of our body through the liver processing it out can take up to 6 hours on average. And so that means that you might still have caffeine floating around in your body when you're trying to go to sleep, which is obviously not helpful. So keeping caffeine earlier in the day, but also then building in those breaks throughout the day so that you don't feel overly tired. And sometimes it might be getting out for a bit of a break at lunchtime. We've culturally lost the sense of having a lunch hour or even a lunch half an hour. Often we don't stop at all. But trying to get outside if possible, trying to get some movement really, really helps with productivity. And sometimes we might feel like, oh, I'm so busy, I can't stop, I can't take a break. but you'll probably be more productive if you actually have a little break at lunchtime, especially if you can get daylight. So I'll talk a bit about sleep as well. It's something I love to talk about, the circadian rhythms of like how our bodies work biologically. We're much more programmed to be active in the day, to be eating in the day, and to get daylight in the daylight hours. And in the evening, we should be resting, we should be not eating, and we should be sleeping. So, and not getting too much light as well. And so those things we can start building. Like sometimes I tell my clients to start building your sleep from the moment you wake up, and that how we would do that is to get outside, go for walks, like be as active as you can during the day so that you get a better night's sleep. Because when we're well rested, our brain functions better, we can concentrate. We're also a lot more emotionally resilient. So, you know, there's days where it just feels like, oh, everyone's getting on top of you and everything's stressful and like you're catastrophizing. It's quite often when we've had a bad night's sleep that will increase that kind of sense of anxiety, but also sense to need carby, sugary foods to keep us going, because our brain is hungry for energy because we're so tired. So prioritizing sleep is really, really important. And I know you've had some people in here already in this group talking about how you can build those healthy sleep habits, but just as a recap, you know, it's making sure you're not having too much screen time at night. You know, we tell our kids perhaps to get off their screens before bed, but it's also really important for us winding down, trying to avoid blue light into the eyes as well in the evenings, but also trying to be as active as you can during the day. And whether it's walking, just getting outside, because the daylight brightness outside will always be brighter than any kind of light that you've got in the house. And so it's called lux, like the actual brightness of the light, and it's like maybe 10 times brighter even on a cloudy day than you would be inside. And that's helping to set your circadian rhythms. It's helping to tell in the daytime your melatonin, the sleep hormone, to stop and that you are awake, and then in the evening the melatonin rises, and when we've got a blue light it's stopping that melatonin from rising. So you might drop off to sleep okay, but you might not get as good a quality like when we're cycling through the sleep cycles. So, kind of gone off track a little bit, but blood sugar balancing was the thing I was talking about. So starting with the day, having your breakfast, if you have coffee, having it after breakfast or with breakfast, not on its own, because it can induce a worse response to insulin, which can set us up for that blood sugar cycling and spiking throughout the day. Other things that are important for blood sugar balancing are enough protein, and especially I find people struggle to get protein at lunchtime, which then leads us to a really low afternoon slump. So if you get that time like 3, 4 into 5 o'clock where you just feel so tired and you can't do any more and your brain kind of grinds to a halt, sometimes it's because we didn't have enough energy at lunchtime to keep us going until tea time. So thinking about where you can get enough protein in your lunch. Now, if you just have a cheese sandwich, that isn't going to be enough protein really, and generally in this country we tend to have sandwiches. It's the most common lunch thing. But if you can try to build in more protein to that, so it could be as simple as adding something to your sandwich, and you could take a boiled egg, a piece of chicken, a piece of fish as well to go alongside your sandwich, or maybe moving to having some salads, like roast vegetables that you can roast up on a Sunday, keep them in the fridge, and then add to them each day. You might put a tin of beans in one day, the next day like a little bit of chicken, something that you can add to really give yourself enough protein. I like to try to suggest with people that with protein, when you're balancing your meals, you have something about the size of your hand, about the size of your palm. Especially if it's fish. With red meat, try to have the inner size of your palm. That's a good rough estimate. I don't really like to get my clients weighing and measuring everything. It's a bit of a hassle and can lead us to feel like we're really restricting, but actually just using your hand as a kind of portion. And then carbs about the size of your fist, so it might be like 1 jacket potato, a couple of spoons of brown rice, and then the rest of your plate vegetables. It's a good way to try and make sure you're getting enough protein. And if you use that to analyze your sandwich, you might think, oh, actually there's not much protein in that sandwich. So lunchtime, really focusing on trying to get as much protein as possible into that. lunch to try and sustain you through till dinner time without reaching for the biscuits at 3 o'clock. So yeah, trying to balance your blood sugar levels. And then a couple of other nutrients that I wanted to talk about. So things that can improve our brain health are often like really, so phytonutrients. So these are the chemicals that are inside natural plants. The things that give them the bright colours are really beneficial to us and to our health. So thinking about dark berries, like beetroot or greens, these have all got really good nutrients in them that support our brain health and our memory. So things like blueberries, raspberries with a really dark colour, could be lots of spinach, kale. Those things are really, really beneficial to support our brain health. And actually some of them, well, they all support our gut health as well, because they are good in there's those phytonutrients that are supporting our body just generally. They're antioxidants, so they're bringing down any systemic inflammation and helping to support just general health of the body. They are also have got lots of different individual benefits. So part of my message is about trying to get as much variety into your diet as possible. I sometimes try and get in clients to think about 30 different foods a week. So it's something you could try, is just get a piece of paper, write down 1 to 30 and try and get to 30 different foods a week. Most people can get to about 20, 24 pretty easily, but it's the last 10 which can be a bit of a struggle. And if you get to 30, like try and go to 40. The reason we want diversity in our diet is because it allows us to tick off all of those different nutrients in a really sort of carefree way. We don't have to think, oh, am I getting enough of these phytonutrients? Am I getting enough calcium? Because actually, if we're eating a broad range of foods, you're probably meeting all of those nutrient needs. Whereas if you're eating a small range of foods, it's much harder to achieve all of that. So the way it would work is if you had red onions one day, you can write down red onions, and then another day, like perhaps have white onions, or have sweet potatoes instead of potatoes, and just trying to mix it up a little bit. If you normally always have chickpeas, like have a different type of bean in your stew or your chilies and that sort of thing. Like really trying to increase the amount of diversity. So one of the reasons it's so important is because our gut health is critical to our health. All our immune system is situated in and around the gut, and that is controlling or supporting our inflammation levels. So where we've got high levels of chronic systemic inflammation, is often like originating from our digestive system, from the gut, because the immune system is so tied up in our digestive system. So part of the reason for introducing a broad and diverse range of foods is that it allows a broad and diverse range of microbes. So these bugs that live inside us, that are really helpful and beneficial to us, they thrive on variety in our diet. So just thinking about trying all types of food and just trying to keep it varied throughout the week. So some of those key phytonutrients, some of the best foods that are really good for your gut are spinach, good for your gut and good for your brain, good for spinach and blueberries, raspberries, also tea, especially green tea. So actually I meant to mention that around the coffee, that green tea is quite a good option if you're trying to reduce your coffee intake. Again, I would still keep it before breakfast, but before lunch and sort of in the morning time. But green tea has something in it called L-theanine, which is actually really calming, and sometimes you can it helps you focus, but without that jitteriness of coffee. So some people find the taste quite bitter, and it is a taste to get used to. It's not it's not something that everyone loves straight away. But if you're looking for something to keep you a little bit more awake, but without the kind of nervousness of coffee, sometimes green tea can be a good option. Then the other thing is B vitamins. So it's really important to try and get enough B vitamins into our diet because they help us with energy. They're quite broadly available in most foods. Sometimes people might need a supplement to help them with their energy, and partly that can be to do with, even if you're eating a broad range of foods, if your digestion isn't good, you're not going to be able to create the B vitamins or to maximize their use, because the microbes that live inside our gut help us to make some of the B vitamins. So it's important that we have got a broad range of those foods for energy. So yeah, B vitamins are generally in most multivitamins if you are thinking about supplementing with those. Other supplements that are kind of, as I said, I'm not like suggesting that everyone rushes out and takes all these, but just thinking about, are you getting enough of those foods? So B vitamins would be one. Magnesium as well is something else, which is a really calming mineral and can help us feel less stressed, which I think most people need nowadays. And it's also quite low in foods, so it's quite hard to get enough just through food. But I would include things like whole grains, brown rice, as well as green leafy vegetables, so things like spinach and kale again, and collard greens. All of these things are brilliant for adding magnesium into your diet. You can, again, think about whether you're getting enough magnesium and potentially whether you need to add a supplement in. The reason it's good is because it calms us down. You can take it in the evening if you do take it, and it helps to get a better quality of sleep as well. So a lot of people find that it can just help us slow down because it helps us to relax our muscles, and we use it up a lot. And when you're stressed, you really burn through magnesium as well. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention in terms of memory and kind of concentration, cognitive ability, is choline. It's a nutrient that we don't hear that much about. In the UK, there isn't a recommended intake of choline. In America, they do have it. It's best found in animal products, so it can be a struggle for people who are on a vegan diet to get enough choline. Most readily found in eggs, in the egg yolk, but you can find them in edamame beans, in broccoli, and tofu. So as a vegan or vegetarian, you can include those readily in your day anyway, because they're all kind of good sources of the beans and the tofu for protein, for vegan protein as well. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say, I think, really on those. So we're going to just to recap. So there's omega-3, thinking about healthy fats for your brain. The other good thing about fats is that they keep us fuller for longer. So we tend to need to snack less when we feel like satisfied with our meals. And if we have a very low fat diet, we often won't feel satisfied and we'll always feel hungry or feel like even if we had a big meal, it wasn't enough. And so having a bit of healthy fats in your diet can really help with satiety as well, with feeling like we've got enough. So omega-3 fats, thinking about your caffeine, trying to keep it earlier in the day. It's okay to have 1 or 2 cups of coffee. Like, you don't need to feel bad about that, but just try and restrict it to a small amount rather than drinking coffee all through the day. We talked about blood sugar balancing as well, like trying to maintain steady states of energy rather than peaks and troughs where you're going from one sugary fix to another. You can do that by increasing the amount of protein and sometimes fats as well. So fibre is the other thing that's important in terms of filling us up for longer. And that's why things like fruits aren't so bad in terms of blood sugars, because they are wrapped up with fibre and all the other goodness. Phytonutrients, so these are like the colourful chemicals in plants, making sure you've got a real rainbow of foods. It's a nice phrase, eat the rainbow, but it is a good challenge to think, have I had anything green today? Have I had anything purple, red? You could write it out on the fridge and tick them off. It's something really fun to do with kids if you have family at home. So just trying to hit all of those different foods, again trying to get variety in your diet as well, because when we're eating a broad range of foods, we're more likely to be hitting all the nutrients that we need. And then just thinking about some of those key nutrients like B vitamins, magnesium, and they can also help us focus. So I have got a free 3-day meal plan, which hopefully it's okay with Madia, and I'll drop the link into here. So it's free, and you can download it I'll put the link in here if that's okay. And it just gives you 3 days worth of different meals. It's all gluten-free, mostly vegan. I think there's one recipe with egg and one with fish, but the rest of them are suitable for vegans. I'd love for you to download it and have a little look if you feel like you need some new recipes. I'm all about kind of helping people beat bloating, working with IBS and gut health, but obviously I just cover all kind of bits of healthy eating and support for diet. So work with people who might have like eczema, might have repeated migraines. It could be anything to do with health that has a dietary connection. So thanks for watching to those guys who've been there. I don't think there's any, I can't see any questions. But yeah, if you want to follow me, I'm Goodness Me Nutrition. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, it'd be nice to hear from you. If you have any questions and you're watching this on the replay, then feel free to just drop some questions in here and I will come back later and see if anyone's asked some questions, and I'm happy to kind of, either email you or message you separately, or to just answer them under here. So yeah, thanks for having me in the group, and I hope you enjoyed that little review of nutrition. If you also have any feedback in terms of what you find that's worked for you, or if you've got energy tips that help you be more productive, or you feel like they help your general brain health, then please drop them in here. Great. All right, I will I'll be in touch soon. Cheers. Bye bye.